Starting now. Hello, my name is Rasheed Smith. I'm a 7th grade math teacher. I'm here with Randy Ginyard, Irina Kanya, Jocelyn, another 7th grade math teacher, Angela Barrett, 7th and 8th grade math teacher, and we're here to discuss called Multimodal Learning in 21st Century. So we're going to start off, and Angela Barrett's going to be our facilitator, and hope you enjoy.
Hi, everybody. So the first topic that we wanted to start discussing was the idea, any specific passages that really stuck out and struck us as we were reading this book. And since I have the floor, I figure I'll just go ahead and start. For myself, this text really seemed to align with the project that I want to do for Imagine It. I want my students to be able to explore the concept and the topic and present their knowledge in different ways. So this really struck a chord with me throughout the book, that there were a lot of usable pieces. One thing in particular I really thought was going to be crucial for my students, and that's in the first chapter, and that the importance of design, the importance of making things look appealing and interesting and catchy. That I think is important for my students, you know, as they present things, as well as for myself as a teacher. You know, just even the simplest things, using colorful markers, using different colored paper, having a neat and clean classroom. One of the quotes that really jumped out to me in that first chapter was that attractive things work better. And I can agree with that. You know, I on a computer that is very sleek and well designed, and of course I'd rather use this than some old clunker that's you know, in the computer lab at school. So there is something to be said for the design and the layout of things, and I want that to be something that I portray with my students, so that they start to understand that that quality of work, creating something that is interesting but also appealing, has an importance to how people will look at what they do and evaluate it. So that was one thing that really I found interesting, and I see it in my everyday life as well. So I didn't know who wanted to jump in next. Again, the first topic that we're discussing is any specific passages that really struck you significantly.
Okay, this is Randy. I can jump in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that that struck me as a quote or a passage was kind of towards the back of the book where the summary is. And it talks about where we are and where we could be. And it talked about the quote is, a number of various thinkers are currently wrestling with the issue and worry that we are not properly preparing citizens for the 21st century. The main ingredient needed for creative problem solving, and the one that is most scarce, is free time. Yes, so it goes along with my Imagine It project. I thought about this because a lot of times, you know, we want to do all these wonderful, creative, out-of-the-box, flexible things, but however, we know we have to prepare and we have to kind of design it so that way it's some sort of structure and that it will go off okay with the students. And one of the things that I struggle with with that is kind of having that free time to do that. With the Imagine It, I believe it's problem solving, not problem solving, but my Imagine It is connecting real life mathematics, or connecting mathematics to the real world, which requires a lot of creativity. Just really thinking about the topics that I cover and connecting that to the real world. And so just having that free time, I've been really struggling with that, just having free time to come up with those ideas, to talk to people, to research, and to really gather materials to do that. So, yeah, that's where I am. Okay. Okay, whoever's next,
Okay.
I'm done with my synopsis. Whoever want to pass the mic to someone else who want to answer that question.
Yeah.
I can go now.
Sure.
So, I think on page 45, 46, I was reading about rewriting songs, and I thought that was a new strategy for the students. There is a website called Vocabulary, and they create rap songs to teach math concepts, and I think they also do it for other subjects. And every time I play a song, the students love it because, you know, it goes along with the things that they are hearing on the radio. And I think that's something that I want to include in my project, having the students rewriting a song that they like. Anybody else?
Yeah, on page 23, there is, that was interesting for me. There was a statement that the screen is now the dominant side of text. So we need to build our curriculum the way that we will use screen in some way, and writing and reading and creating different things in our classroom. New generation, basically, their communication is around screen. And we need to apply different methods, different instructions to basically round our lessons around technology. It was page 23.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll wrap that question up before we move on to the next. I had a very similar quote as Angela did. I have it in my notes. It says, "Design carries meaning."
Mhm.
That was really important. You know, combining the text with visual elements, and you know, I teach a lot of English language learners, and it's hard for them sometimes to even understand how structure works. And when you're reading a lot of words, which words are important and which, you know, how the structure works really affects their comprehension. I thought that design carrying meaning and the way you present the work and the way you can kind of decorate it, I guess, would really bring and add meaning to some of their new passages they're reading. So it'll help them out, especially for the new English language learners.
Okay. All right, so this is Randy again. I will go ahead and move on to the next question, which I believe is what surprised us most, and what contradiction, or what contradicted our understanding. And so I'll go ahead and go first. I want to focus on chapter 4, which I think begins on page 73. Just really studying multimodal text and slowing down to think. So one of the things that caught my eye was, let me find it. It was really when students are researching things online for whatever content or whatever assignment or whatever it is that they're searching for, you really should structure the way they search. I know I've had students in the past search for different things. And I assume that they're going to really read through the different options as they search through Google and find, you know, the best text or the best description or the best this. But what they were saying was students really just look at the first thing that they see and they just gravitate to that. So in chapter 4, they kind of outline like fair use guidelines as to how you need to teach your kids how to look for materials online and not just pick the first thing that they see, and really read through some of the different searches and text to get the best possible information, and also pull from several to get the best possible information. One of the problems that I always had was they'll always give me that first one. And I'm like, okay, well, this didn't take too much thought. All you did was search and you saw the first thing. But me as the instructor, I need to make sure I train them or teach them how to look at several things, read several items, and then come up and collect information from all text to come up with whatever it is that, you know, as a teacher, I'm requiring them to do. So that was my thought. That's it. So I'll pass the mic to somebody else.
Yeah, I will continue because I really, I was struck with the same thing that Randy mentioned.
Okay.
That right now, that we need to distinguish, our students need additional skills while reading. It's a critical reading skills because there are so many informations online that we need to train students to be critical what they read and what they use. And I like the way they, I think they distinguish like 5 key sort of concept of critical reading skills. And one of them is like, how do we check if the source is reliable source?
Mm-hmm.
Is the source relevant to what we are looking for? And how do we train students to make interconnection between different sources? So I think that's what really, like, I didn't think about it before. And when I read this book, it really struck me. I thought that reading is just reading, comprehension, but it requires different skills while using multimodal approach.
I think they offer one of the strategies, and it's called, let me see the name, polar opposites, and it helps the students slow down when they are reading something. Because it has happened to me that I give them a website and then they rush to the website and they're done with the activity without getting what I was expecting them to get out of it. So I think, you know, we have to slow them down with a guide of the things that we are looking for.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think definitely our students do rush through things, that they take that superficial first website that pops up because, well, if it's first, it must be best. I don't know what their thinking is with it. But they do need to be more critical and more evaluative in the sources that they use and how they use them. I also, you know, going back to the question, what surprised you, what may have contradicted your current understanding? Really, chapter 5 made me laugh a little bit because on page 97, it talks about how our curriculum is going to shift away from standards-based testing. And right, you know, I just sat through another PD on the PARC test. So it kind of makes me laugh, like, well, maybe we would like to, and maybe the world is, but not our district. We are still very much in the standards-based testing. But regardless of that, we still have a responsibility to get our students prepared for their future. And on that same page, it talks about how jobs will be changing as the future unfolds with technology and interconnectedness, even what we're doing right now. This is what our students will be used to on a daily basis going forward. This is what their careers will entail, having these video conferences and being online and in all different locations. And if we don't circumvent the old school way of tests are best, and we need to do that first, if we don't start saying, okay, we need to do that as a requirement, but let's put that over here, and then let's learn the skills that we need to be successful in the future. That's what's going to engage our students. That's what's going to keep them learning, and that will propel them into their careers. You know, college bound and all of those things are phrases that we hear, but then it's not backed up all the time by what is handed down to us. And maybe by getting students more involved in STEM, getting them more involved in multimodal learning. That's the key to it, that we have to do what we know is best so that they have the greatest opportunity for their future. So, you know, it definitely contradicts my current understanding is what I've been presented with by administration, but it didn't surprise me at all that we're doing what the kids really need more than anything. So, my 2 cents.
Yeah, as far as anything that contradicted my understanding or surprised me, I wish the book had a little bit more about math in it.
Right.
I didn't see a lot of strong math, you know, examples. And I guess the idea behind multimodal literacy is not about a particular subject, but one of the examples they had was a lot of reading to comprehend strategies, and I liked a thing called rewrite. You know, like a rewriting strategy as far as trying to get the kids to discern the difference between you know, general vocabulary and content-specific vocabulary. And I think one of the quotes in the book was 25,000 words vocabulary. You have a 25,000 word vocabulary by the end of the 8th grade, and by the end of high school, it's up to 50,000, so it doubles.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was really telling as far as us trying to really help those students learn the vocabulary, especially, you know, for whatever skill they're going to do in the future. It's important to have content-rich vocabulary.
Yeah, to piggyback on that a little, you know, I remember when my sons were very little. They're 10 and 8 now, but I remember reading a lot about vocabulary development in young children and how it just explodes in the first couple of years, and you know, they go from not speaking to full sentences to paragraphs and things like that. And I never really thought about how much students still have to learn when they become adolescents, when they become high school students. I always thought that vocabulary development really was critical in those primary years, you know, up to age 7, up to age 8, and then they just kind of floated with it. But that's a really good point from this book that, you know, they don't achieve that huge mastery until they really become high schoolers, and what they pack in those 4 years doubles their understanding and their knowledge that they'd had in their entire lifetime prior. And so that's a really critical component, I think, for high school teachers to take back. I know I had taught kindergarten, I taught first grade, I taught the primary grades with that huge vocabulary development focus. And I wonder if that is as much of a focus in high school as it is for those primary grades, because clearly it's essential to it, and it's a major factor in students' development too. So it's a really good point that I think gets glossed over quite a bit.
All right. Okay, does any, are we moving on? I think we're moving on to the next question, or we did kind of start it. What are the main takeaways from the book? And so for me, the main takeaway was that technology is really changing the way students learn and the way teachers are teaching, the way we're instructing, and also the way that they're really developing cognitively and academically. And students in this world, people are really looking at technology as the information piece, as the learning piece, and they're more engaged in that. And so I think a lot of let me look when the book was written. A lot of the things that, when was this book written? I can't see. A lot of the things that they're talking about, I feel like maybe when they wrote the book, it was cutting edge, but now every chapter we've experienced, we've seen it, we've explored in the MSU STEM program. So it's almost like confirming, or, you know, just really knowing that it is coming into practice on a large scale. So that was my main takeaway from the book. All right. Anyone else wants to continue on?
Yeah, I had several, maybe very specific takeaways. One of them is talking and drawing strategy, because I think I can use it in high school math class. So it's a strategy that, and they present the procedure, how to use it. It requires initial drawing on a specific topic. Then it's a studying time, and the final drawing after the studying. So students are basically, they can see how they grow on the topic, from the initial to the final drawing. So I like this. Another takeaway, and it's connected with drawing, is that as a math teacher and high school math teacher, I should pay closer attention to teach students technical vocabulary. And I should teach it using multimodal approach, including symbols, images, and so on. And actually, in the beginning of the school year, I was doing, we were going over like study skills that you need to be successful in the classroom. And students were actually drawing or creating poster. That was their choice. How do they present different study skills? Like, what is motivation? What picture do you see when how you understand word motivation? What is note taking, and so on? It's a simple thing. It's not strictly mathematical vocabulary, but that was interesting to look at their images, the images that they created. And the third thing that it's really important now is that any project we create for students or we assign, we should include design and composition.
Yep.
Being a part of evaluation. Like, sometimes, I don't know, maybe my taste is not good. Maybe somebody else would grade it differently, but we need to find some common ground for evaluating creativity. That's it.
I think that was one of the things that really became clear to me as I was reading this book, that in the past, I know that, at least in my school, math was looked at, math and science particularly, dry subjects, boring, just kind of learn. It was always history that had history fair projects that were so interesting, and reading books and doing dioramas and all those things. Those always seem to come through as being the creative ends. And reading this and reading about computer use and websites and things like that, I think the more I learn about it, the more creativity you need to have for these subjects as well. And just incorporating that into the learning that the students are doing. Like Jocelyn, how you mentioned having them do songs with what they're doing, creating websites, looking at how to evaluate their creativity. Going forward, I know that this book wasn't necessarily written for math and science and those topics that we're a little bit more interested in because of what we're teaching, but it applies across the board now. I think there's creativity necessary in all these subject areas, and especially with ability to use the internet, to use multimodal ways to display your understanding. So it's good to see. I hope it engages students a lot more as we go forward.
Kind of on the same point. I'm sorry, you got a job.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, last week I was, going over some of the words that my students struggle with. And I feel like they always get confused with absolute value, opposites, reciprocals. And I really want them to understand those words better, and to be able to recognize the symbols and maybe create visual representations on a number line. And it goes back to vocabulary, doing multiple things with the same words so that they can see the difference between them, but also how are they related to each other. And I think that takes time for them to explore different strategies to finally be able to understand it and, you know, write about it and talk about it and develop that deep understanding that we want.
Yeah, and it's all about, I guess, kind of picking up there. It's all about, you know, trying to engage the students. I love one of the excerpts in the book about the kid who loves math and science, but she struggled in reading, I think. And, you know, she was able to write an essay on how to repair a motorcycle. And that kind of set her up for, you know, it helped her writing because she was writing about something she enjoyed and she was engaged in it. And it kind of set her up for a career path, you know, from reading the instructions and watching videos and clips like that. She was engaged, and you know, I think the book suggests that the girl might go on to, you know, pursue a future in, you know, building and fixing motorcycles, which is cool to me that you could use math and science that way, writing, and you know, in the same interdisciplinary, I guess, modality.
Okay. Okay, so I believe our next question, are we ready to move on?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not ready to answer, but I'll read the question. What are the implications for teaching and learning? So whoever wants to kick it off, go right ahead.
I can take that.
Okay.
So I think, you know, what I just mentioned about getting the students to be more creative and to tap into that side of them, and a lot of us have mentioned that, as well as even what we had said earlier about using online resources. It's that we really need to structure things for students. We need to give them a structure so that they can express their creativity. So, you know, teaching them how to evaluate sources online so that they can start to make good choices for themselves. Allowing them to, or encouraging them to do multimodal kind of presentations and be creative with the way they express their understanding, but then to have a rubric that sets forth the expectations so that it's that everything that we're doing has a point, it has a direction that it's going into, but that we as their teachers need to start by planning with that in mind, going forward and saying, well, we want to make sure that students do X, Y, and Z. So what does that look like? What are our expectations? How can we help the students to get there and express themselves the best? So I think for me, what it means is a lot more thoughtful planning, not just let's do this project, you know, let's create you know, a poem about mathematical topics, or let's do a makerspace with, you know, construction paper and things to demonstrate the coordinate plane. Being more formal in my thoughts with an exact outcome with parameters, but a lot of freedom in the middle for the students to create, which is hard. I'm used to, you know, teaching math in a logical pattern and things like that. And so for me, it's a challenge to step out of my comfort zone, but to do it knowing that it's what my students need. So it will definitely be a challenge as far as teaching, and something that I have to be more careful to plan and really think the whole project through rather than jumping in too soon.
Okay, so I'll go ahead, Randy. Implications for teaching and learning. I teach high school, so at this point, the goal for high school is usually to prepare students for college and career ready, and that really means, you know, preparing them for the rigor and the expectations of learning the information, connecting the concepts themselves. So with reading this book, I'm understanding that it's imperative that we bring different types of things to assist students in making those connections. And that could be being that creative source, or using text, or using technology, or using just regular hardware just for students to create. So as a teacher, I think for me, it means that I'm going to have to really figure out how to think out of the box and come up with creative ways to apply the concepts, or get students to connect the concepts to something that they may see every day or may experience in their life. And so that definitely is a hard thing to do, and really not dwell on it. As long as they make the connection, then we can go to the abstract or go to the technical and so forth of a particular concept. So for me, in high school, I only have a little amount of time to do that, because we have to cover so much, for standardized testing. So really figuring out how to take those opportunities to do that and getting the most bang out of my book to do that. So that's it for me.
Going back to the rubrics, when I'm grading my students, I usually like to think of 5 different things. And one of them is the problem-solving strategies. And I ask my students to come up with a plan for the problem. How are they going to solve it? And also, how are they going to represent it? And we have different tools for that. They can use a number line, a graph, an equation. And also, I want them to be able to make connections between topics, and talk about how is that strategy or problem related to other things that we have learned in class. And I always try to go back and reinforce the mathematical language so that they can be using the vocabulary that we have learned. And one thing that I like to grade them is presentation, making sure that their work looks good for other readers to understand it. And I try to stick to those 5 things. And the more consistent I am, the better they understand what I'm asking from them. So I can share my rubric with you guys if you want later on.
That would be great.
I think the whole book is just telling us that there is no other way to teach and learn right now than multimodal way. That we have the generation of students, basically the society changed so much that teaching and learning has to take multimodal approach. And I think that that's probably the major implication for teaching and learning. And also they emphasize on, as we mentioned before, on creativity on one side, but they also emphasize collaboration and teamwork, which we are doing every day in our classroom. And in addition to this, we need to incorporate the visual and virtual experience for our students. So like I would think of how I can use some simulation sites in mathematics, teaching probability, for example, and so on.
I think for me, the major, an implication for teaching and learning is the content area learning is supported by literacy strategies. I think that was one of the most telling things that I read, and it makes perfect sense, because that's how we disseminate knowledge. That's how we transfer information, through literacy. That's how things survive. So you can comprehend. If you can use literacy strategies to comprehend things, whatever means, writing, multimodal, help you succeed in the future. Want to go to the next question? Yeah. What ideas will you apply to your current want to take that on first?
I can start. So I mentioned before, I would like to use the talking drawing strategy in my classroom. I also, and I don't know, I think it was in the beginning of the book, they mentioned that the good thing to approach multimodality is to take one strategy or one website or one something and apply through the school year, so you become expert on this particular strategy. So I think I would like to do that, because and like if you are bombarded with 100 different strategies and websites to use, you really don't concentrate on one. And I would like to, kind of slow down and think and become the expert on one or two strategies or sites to use. So that's what I would like to do.
So I can jump in here. I think for myself, I'm kind of bookending the ideas of the book, bookending the actual book. What stood out to me in the beginning, the idea of design, the idea of having something that is creative and appealing and organized, as well as the other end of the book that talked about how, like Jocelyn had talked about, setting forth clear directives as far as rubrics and expectations and things like that, so that students have a way to focus their creativity and meet the expectations and go forward and create high quality work, not just work that might look pretty and get the design end, but also work that achieves many goals. That incorporates different technologies, that incorporates different levels of creativity. That's something that I really want to make sure that I include in my Imagine It project. I also feel that we're in the place that we should be. Those of us in the STEM program, those of us going forward with this, I think that we are learning the basis of what students really need to be engaged in going forward. So I hope that what we're doing spreads and inspires others, whether they go through a STEM program or not, but just that idea of creating and learning and incorporating everything in our world, whether that's song and dance and construction paper and computers, that everything has a place, and how we can interweave that together for success in the future.
I totally agree with everything that's been said so far. I guess for me, the context would be really print to product, but not just cutesy product, but actually something of meaning. Can you model with mathematics, and can you make it make sense? Because can you model real world ideas using math? And if you can, then math can be a powerful tool, and it has applications in any discipline. So what I would like to see and use in my specific Imagine It idea. So, print to product and having students really use math as a model.
Okay, just to kind of wrap up what I got from the book, just really hoping to use some of the strategies implemented in order to bring about the concepts for mathematics. Also really maybe focusing on the vocabulary development, some of the techniques and strategies that was discussed early in this video call, in the book as well. And then also thinking about the creativity piece, having a little structure, however, give less structure so we can get students to think about math in the real world and how it's applied. And that's it for me. Okay.
Anyone else? Or
for me, I would say, you know, I just have to keep reminding myself that the students need a new kind of teacher, one that is able to follow along with the things that they are doing, because those are the things that mean something to them. And I just need to make sure that I stay up to date with technology. That way they can find meaning in my classroom.
Okay, well, I think that concludes our broadcast. We enjoyed it from our Deeplay group, and you know, thanks for joining us. I hope you learned something about multimodal learning. And the title of our book again was Multimodal Learning for the 21st Century Adolescent. Pick it up, read it. We got a lot of great insight from it, and we enjoy it. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.